A black waitress helped a poor homeless woman unaware she is the mother of a Korean mafia boss, and this one decision would change her life forever. The Los Angeles skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of La Mer restaurant. Inside, soft lighting illuminated tables where the city's elite dined on meals that cost more than what Daisy made in a week, at its Thursday evening. 8 o'clock. Her feet ached. Daisy Harrison slipped into the back room, pulled $17 in tips from her apron pocket, and added them to the crumpled bills in her locker. $43 total for a 7-hour shift. Rent was due in 5 days. She was $200 short. Miss Harrison. Mr. Henderson's voice cut through the kitchen noise. Table 6 needs water. Now that. She swallowed her exhaustion and returned to the dining room floor, pitcher in hand. The manager watched her with cold eyes, always calculating, always finding fault. He'd written her up twice this month for attitude issues, which really meant she'd smiled at the dishwasher instead of ignoring him like the other servers did. "Excuse me, sir." A timid voice belonged to Marcus, the new busboy barely 18. "I dropped a tray of glasses," Mr. Henderson said furiously. "It comes out of your pay, you clumsy idiot," his voice carried across the restaurant. Daisy set down her pitcher. "It's fine, Marcus. It was an accident. Everyone drops something their first week." Henderson's jaw tightened. "Mind your business, Miss Harrison. Unless you want to join him in the unemployment line." She held his gaze a moment too long. Long enough for Marcus to slip away, long enough for Henderson to make a mental note. In the kitchen, Daisy found Rosa, the line cook, crying over burned sauce. "He's going to fire me," Rosa whispered. "I can't lose this job. It's fixable." Daisy grabbed fresh ingredients. "Start again. I'll tell Henderson table 12 needs more time to decide." Rosa squeezed her hand. "You're too good for this place." "Maybe, but good didn't pay rent." Later, during her mandated 10-minute break, Daisy stood by the window watching couples laugh over champagne, watching businessmen close deals over expensive steaks, watching women draped in jewelry that could fund a year of her life. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, a barrier between worlds. Would she ever sit on the other side? Or would she always be the invisible hand that served, the ghost who cleaned, the voice that asked? Anything else? The lights above reflected in the window, and for just a moment, they looked like stars. Before we continue, if you want to discover how Daisy and Shin Tae-Young's impossible love story unfolds, and what happens when a Korean billionaire's mother shows up at a restaurant disguised as a homeless woman to test a waitress's heart, make sure to hit the subscribe button on this channel. Drop a comment telling us which country in the world you're watching from. Each view helps bring more heartfelt stories like this one to Lee. An elderly Korean woman stepped inside, her gray cardigan frayed and torn at the edges, her shoes scuffed and worn. She moved slowly, deliberately, scanning the restaurant with dark, intelligent eyes. The hostess recoiled. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked tonight." It was a lie. 3 tables sat empty. Nearby diners glanced up, then quickly away. A woman in pearls whispered something to her husband. 2 businessmen shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The staff exchanged looks, uncomfortable, embarrassed, relieved it wasn't their problem. Mr. Henderson materialized from the back office, his expression hardening. He crossed the floor with measured steps, his voice loud enough to carry. "We require reservations." His eyes raked over the woman's worn clothes. "This isn't a shelter." The elderly woman said nothing. She simply stood there, shoulders straight despite her shabby appearance, meeting his contempt with quiet dignity. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. Other servers turned away. Marcus, the busboy, stared at his feet. Even Rosa, watching from the kitchen doorway, shook her head and retreated. Daisy stood frozen across the room, balancing empty plates. She saw the woman's proud bearing, the way she refused to shrink under Henderson's disdain. She saw the trembling hands that spoke of age and vulnerability. She saw the flicker of hurt beneath that dignified exterior. And suddenly Daisy flashed back and saw her grandmother, Granny, standing at the welfare office, treated like a burden. Dismissed by store clerks who assumed she couldn't afford anything. invisible to people who should have seen her humanity. Daisy's feet moved before her mind caught up. "I will pay for her," Daisy said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I'm paying." The restaurant went silent. Every head turned. Henderson's face darkened, his eyes promising consequences. The wealthy diners stared, some with curiosity, others with judgment. The staff watched in shock. Daisy's heart hammered against her ribs, but she extended her hand to the elderly woman. "Please, this way." The woman's eyes met hers, a flash of something Daisy couldn't quite read. Surprise? Assessment? Gratitude? Daisy guided her to a corner table, away from the stairs, her hands shaking as she pulled out the chair. Henderson's glare burned into her back like a brand that she'd just signed her own termination papers. But looking at the woman's face, seeing the quiet dignity restored, Daisy found she didn't care. Some things mattered more than keeping a job. Daisy set down fresh silverware, a clean napkin, and a glass of water with lemon. She handed the elderly woman a menu, her hands steady despite the weight of every eye in the restaurant. "Take your time," Daisy said softly. "Can I get you anything to start?" The woman studied her face. "You are kind to strangers," she said, her English accented but clear. "Why?" Daisy blinked at the directness. "Everyone deserves kindness." "What do you value most?" "Respect. Dignity. Treating people the way I'd want to be treated." The woman nodded slowly. "Tell me about your family." Something in her tone made Daisy answer honestly. "My grandmother raised me. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She taught me that people might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." Daisy's throat tightened. "She passed 2 years ago. She would be proud of you tonight." Daisy excused herself to place an order. The chicken pasta she'd been saving for her own break. Simple but hearty and warm. When she returned, Mr. Henderson was hovering nearby, arms crossed. "Daisy, this is highly irregular. We have standards to maintain." "She's a customer," Daisy said quietly. "This establishment caters to appropriate clientele." His voice carried deliberately. Several diners turned to look. At tea table 9, a woman in designer clothes caught the hostess's attention. "This is unacceptable. We come here for the atmosphere." Daisy felt the pressure closing in, whispers, stares, Henderson's barely contained rage. But she refilled the woman's tea with steady hands, asked if she needed anything else, maintained her composure even as her stomach churned. The elderly woman watched everything. Not just Daisy, but how the other servers avoided the table, how Marcus nervously brought bread, how Rosa gave Daisy an encouraging nod from the kitchen. She observed Daisy's gentle manner with each person, her quiet strength under pressure, the way she treated everyone, from Henderson to the busboy, with equal respect. Finally, the woman finished her meal. She reached across the table and touched Daisy's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You have a beautiful soul," she said, her dark eyes intense. "That is rare." She stood and walked out with the same quiet dignity she'd entered with. Daisy stared as she walked out. "My office. Now." Henderson's voice was ice. Daisy took a breath and followed him, knowing her job was over. 3 days had passed since Henderson's fury, his threats, his ultimatum. Daisy had survived by a thread. He couldn't fire her without cause, but he'd made her life miserable ever since. Tuesday lunch shift. The door opened at noon. An elegant Korean woman entered, dressed in a tailored silk suit, her hair swept into a sophisticated bun. Diamond earrings caught the light. Designer handbag. Polished heels that clicked authoritatively across the marble floor. The other waitresses rushed forward, eager to serve. Daisy froze mid-step, her pitcher of water suspended in air. Those eyes. That dignified bearing that it couldn't be. "I would like Daisy Harrison to serve me," the woman said, her voice carrying across the restaurant. The staff exchanged confused glances. Wealthy diners looked up, recognizing quality and status in every detail of the woman's appearance. Mr. Henderson straightened his tie, his expression shifting to obsequious attention. Lady Baek Soo-Yeon, because that's who she was, transformed, walked directly to Daisy. "3 nights ago, you showed me kindness when no one else would." Her voice rang clear, addressing not just Daisy but the entire restaurant. I was testing, looking for character in a world that values only appearance. I found it in you. Daisy's mouth went dry. Testing. I am Lady Baek Soo-Yeon, mother of Shin Tae-Young, head of the Baek family business empire. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. I visited 5 restaurants across Los Angeles dressed as you saw me. You were the only person who treated me as human. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Shin Tae-Young, one of the wealthiest men in California. The Baek empire, billions in real estate, technology, international trade. Mr. Henderson's face drained of color. He stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. Lady Baek, I had no idea if I'd known. Exactly. Her voice cut like a blade. She turned to face him fully. You judged me by my clothing. She judged me by my humanity. That is the difference between you. Henderson opened his mouth, closed it, his career flashing before his eyes. Lady Baek turned back to Daisy, her expression softening. I came today to thank you properly, and to ask if you would do me the honor of meeting my son. She extended an embossed card. He should know the woman who passed a test that hundreds have failed. Daisy stared at the card, her world tilting on its axis. Will you come? Lady Baek asked gently. Every eye in the restaurant waited for her answer. The Rolls Royce appeared like something from another world, gliding to the curb outside La Mer's entrance. Sleek, black, impossibly elegant. Every patron turned to watch. The driver opened the rear door and Shin Tae-Young emerged, tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Daisy's annual salary. His presence commanded attention, but his eyes held unexpected warmth. The restaurant staff stood frozen. Marcus dropped his tray of water glasses. Rosa clutched her apron. Even Mr. Henderson seemed to shrink. Shin Tae-Young entered, and the room held its breath. He went immediately to his mother, embracing her with evident affection, speaking rapid Korean. Lady Baek laughed, touching his face, responding in their shared language. The tenderness between them was obvious, genuine. Then Lady Baek turned, extending her hand toward Daisy. Tae-Young, this is Daisy Harrison. He approached, and Daisy's heart hammered. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s perhaps, with kind eyes that studied her face with genuine interest. He bowed respectfully. My mother has told me what you did. His English was perfect, his voice steady and sincere. In my world, loyalty and character are rare treasures. You possess both. Daisy found her voice. I just did what anyone should do. But they don't. His gaze held hers. That's why it matters. He gestured to a nearby table, and they sat, Lady Baek, Shin Tae-Young, and Daisy, while the entire restaurant pretended not to stare. Tell me, he said, leaning forward. What do you dream of? What do you want from life? Daisy blinked at the directness. Stability. A life where I'm not always counting pennies. Maybe something that matters beyond just surviving. And what matters to you? People. Connection. Making someone's day a little better. She paused, overwhelmed but forcing honesty. I know that sounds small compared to. It's not small. His expression softened. It's everything. He glanced at his mother. She taught me that wealth without character is worthless. Success without compassion is empty. Something passed between them, not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two people from different worlds seeing something authentic in each other. Shin Tae-Young stood, extending his hand. Please have dinner with us. Not here, somewhere we can truly talk. My mother believes you're extraordinary. I'd like to discover why. Daisy looked at his outstretched hand. Her future balanced on this single choice. She took it. The private dining room occupied the top floor of a building Daisy had only seen from street level. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Los Angeles like a living painting, the city stretching endlessly beneath them. Lady Baek sat across from Daisy, Shin Tae-Young beside his mother. A server brought tea, then disappeared, leaving them in intimate silence. I should explain why I came to your restaurant, Lady Baek began. I've been searching for a daughter-in-law. Not through matchmakers or society connections, but through character. Daisy's teacup froze halfway to her lips. I disguised myself in 5 restaurants across the city. upscale establishments where the wealthy dine. Lady Baek's voice held quiet pain. At the first, the waitress pretended not to see me. At the second, the manager called security. At the third, diners covered their noses and complained. At the fourth, I was physically escorted out. She paused, meeting Daisy's eyes. You were the only person who saw me as human. I looked for gold in a room full of coal. I found it in you, Daisy. Shin Tae-Young watched Daisy carefully. Her genuine shock, the way she processed this revelation without performing false modesty or grasping ambition. I'm not suggesting an arranged marriage, Lady Baek continued. I'm offering an opportunity. Get to know my son. Let him know you. If there is connection, if there is respect, perhaps there is future. Daisy set down her cup, her hands trembling. I can't. She looked between them, overwhelmed. The class difference alone, I'm a waitress. She gestured helplessly. We live in different worlds, different cultures. I don't know anything about your life, your expectations. I'm terrified of losing myself in something I don't understand. Shin Tae-Young leaned forward. My mother taught me that true wealth is measured in character, not currency. His voice was steady, sincere. I've spent my life building an empire, investments, acquisitions, endless expansion. But I've never built something that matters beyond profit margins. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'd like to share my life with someone who understands what truly matters. Someone who sees people, not portfolios. Someone who risks her job to feed a stranger. His eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking if you'd let me know you. Lady Baek reached across the table, touching Daisy's hand. The choice is yours, child. No pressure. No obligation. Just possibility. Daisy stared at the city below, at the life she'd always watched from the outside. Can I think about it? She whispered. Of course, Shin Tae-Young said gently. Take all the time you need. Shin Tae-Young arrived at Daisy's apartment building himself, no driver, no entourage. Just him in a simple black car, waiting at the curb like any ordinary date. I thought you'd send someone, Daisy said, sliding into the passenger seat. This isn't business. He smiled. It's personal. The estate sat in the Hollywood Hills, modern glass and steel that somehow felt warm rather than cold. But he didn't parade her through marble foyers or show off luxury. Instead, he led her to the garden behind the house. My mother planted this herself, he said, gesturing to rows of Korean vegetables and herbs. She refuses to let the gardeners touch it. Says working the soil keeps her grounded. They walked through hydrangeas and persimmon trees. Inside, he showed her the kitchen, surprisingly modest, lived in, where Lady Baek's apron still hung on a hook. She cooks here every Sunday, he said. Family tradition. Family photos lined a hallway, generations of Baeks, Korea to America, struggle to success. Everyone sees the empire, Shin Tae-Young said quietly. They don't see the pressure. The expectation to be perfect, strategic, untouchable. He turned to her. It's lonely at the top. Daisy understood loneliness. It's lonely at the bottom, too. Different reasons, same feeling. They talked for hours, about his burden of legacy, her dreams of escape, about family loyalty, authenticity, about being seen for who you truly are rather than what you represent. Everyone wants something from me, he admitted. Status, money, connections, access. My mother knew I needed someone who wanted nothing. Someone who would choose me, not my wealth. Lady Baek appeared then, insisting they cook dinner together. You want to know someone? Cook with them. In the kitchen, Shin Tae-Young taught Daisy to prepare bulgogi and kimchi jjigae. She asked questions, followed instructions, laughed at her clumsy attempts to fold dumplings properly. Like this. She held up a lopsided creation. He grinned. Perfect. Character over perfection. When she struggled with chopsticks during dinner, he didn't condescend. He simply adjusted her grip, patient and encouraging. You're not pretending, he observed. You're just you. I don't know how to be anyone else. Good. Don't learn. As the evening ended, walking her to his car, something had shifted. Not love, not yet, but understanding. Recognition. The possibility that two people from different worlds might build something real. Will you see me again? He asked, Daisy looked at him, truly looked, and saw not a billionaire but a man hoping for genuine connection. "Yes," she said. "I will." The weeks blurred together. Galas where Daisy wore simple dresses and smiled through conversations about investments she didn't understand, business dinners where she sat beside Shin Tae-Young and learned to navigate his world. But he entered hers too. He showed up at La Mer one Tuesday evening, sitting in her section, tipping $300 and treating Marcus and Rosa with such genuine respect that the entire staff stood speechless. He asked about their families, remembered their names, saw them as people. Mr. Henderson practically prostrated himself. Daisy watched it all with growing clarity. Privilege opened doors, but character determined how you walked through them. Still, doubt gnawed at her. At a charity gala, surrounded by women in designer gowns discussing vacation homes and private schools, Daisy felt herself shrinking. Could she be herself here? Would she lose her identity trying to fit into a world that wasn't built for her? Lady Baek found her on the balcony. "You look troubled, child." "I don't belong here," Daisy whispered. "I'm terrified I'll have to become someone else to survive." "You do not change for him. You grow with him. That is different." Lady Baek squeezed her hand. "Growth honors who you are. Change erases it." 3 months after that first dinner, Shin Tae-Young asked Daisy to meet him at his mother's garden. Their garden now, the place where everything had begun to feel possible. He didn't kneel. Didn't produce a ring box. Instead, he took both her hands, his expression vulnerable and honest. "I'm not going to make grand promises about fairy tales," he said. "I'm asking you to build something new with me. A family based on respect, partnership, and the values you showed my mother that night." His voice steadied. "I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, beside me." Daisy's throat tightened. "I'm scared. So am I. What if I can't do this? What if you can?" She thought of her grandmother, of working triple shifts, of watching life through restaurant windows. She thought of Lady Baek's test, of choosing kindness when it cost her everything. She thought of Shin Tae-Young learning to cook with her, laughing at lopsided dumplings, treating her world with the same respect he showed his own. The familiar struggle waited behind her, safe, predictable, small. The unknown stretched ahead, terrifying, uncertain, vast. "Yes," Daisy said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." He pulled her close, and she felt his relief, his joy, his fear matching hers. Together, they'd be brave enough. The wedding blended 2 worlds into something entirely new. Traditional Korean hanbok met African-American heritage in a ceremony that honored both families. Lady Baek wept openly as Daisy bowed in respect, as Shin Tae-Young's voice shook reading vows that promised partnership, not possession. Rosa and Marcus sat in the front row, dressed in their finest. Even Mr. Henderson received an invitation, a lesson in grace Daisy insisted on, though he declined to attend. "You're too kind," Shin Tae-Young murmured as they danced. "I'm exactly kind enough," Daisy corrected, smiling against his shoulder. The months that followed brought adjustment and growth. Daisy learned Korean phrases from Lady Baek, who learned to make sweet potato pie from Daisy. Shin Tae-Young discovered his wife's gift wasn't just compassion but vision. She saw problems he'd been too privileged to notice. "What if we started something?" Daisy proposed one morning over breakfast. "A program. Restaurants partner with us. Anyone hungry gets a meal, no questions asked. We cover the cost." Shin Tae-Young looked up from his coffee. "You want to institutionalize what you did for my mother. I want to make sure no one is ever turned away again." Within 6 months, the Beck-Harrison initiative launched across Los Angeles. 20 restaurants participating, hundreds of meals served weekly. Daisy visited each location personally, training staff, sharing her story, reminding them that dignity costs nothing but means everything. She hired Rosa as the program's culinary director. Marcus became an outreach coordinator, helping train restaurant staff on compassionate service. One afternoon, Daisy sat in their garden, hers and Lady Baek's now, watching the persimmon trees sway. Shin Tae-Young joined her, settling onto the bench beside her. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Everything that changed?" Daisy thought of exhausted feet, counted pennies, watching life through windows. She thought of who she'd been, good-hearted but invisible, kind but powerless. "I didn't lose myself," she said. "I found what I was always meant to become." She'd learned that kindness doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've always been. It had transformed her life, yes, but more than that, it had transformed a family, a legacy, a small corner of the world. The richest treasures, she'd discovered, were never found in bank accounts. They were found in human hearts willing to see each other's humanity. Lady Baek emerged from the kitchen, carrying tea, her smile warm and knowing. And that was worth everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness can change everything, and that love isn't about where you come from, it's about who you choose to become. Drop a comment below. What moment resonated with you most? Was it Daisy defending Lady Baek against the manager, the revelation that it was all a test, or their choice to build the Baek-Harrison initiative together to ensure no one is ever turned away from a meal again? Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the simplest act of compassion can lead you to the love of your life.